Welcome to another episode of the Dentology Podcast, where we discuss the business of dentistry. In this podcast series, we'll be discussing all the non-clinical aspects of dentistry, from goodwill values, finance, marketing, how to buy and sell a dental practice, mindset, through to where you can invest your money in team management issues. My name is Andy Acton, and I'm joined by my co-host, Chris Strevens. Let's jump straight into it.
So, hello and welcome to our latest episode of Dentology, the Business of Dentistry podcast. And today we are joined by Ken Finlayson. We're delighted to have Ken join us. Ken's the owner of FMC, the Dental Communications Group. He's an entrepreneur innovator, recently has become a climber, and he is a storyteller to rival Roald Dahl. He has wonderful stories. Welcome, Ken. How are you doing?
Very well, thank you. A lovely introduction.
Yeah, what an intro.
You summed it up.
Yeah.
Perfectly.
I thought it wasn't a bad one, to be fair.
Very good.
Storytelling.
Yeah.
Most of which we can't mention on here, though, Ken, so that's the...
I do feel under pressure. The best stories can't be repeated, but I'll do my best.
Always. And you're looking very good for somebody who's just returned from Mount Kilimanjaro, which we're going to get to later on.
Yeah, indeed. Well, I'll describe a little bit about that later, but I am incapacitated. I've only... just last week I was in a wheelchair. I've just come out of that, so I'm still struggling a bit, but over the worst.
What was that for then?
Oh, so Will, you can't leave that one hanging. There's a story in there already.
Well, I injured myself on the mountain, managed to get through, and it's never really healed itself. So a couple of weeks back, I started doing a little bit of running to get fit again, and totally incapacitated myself. And I'd been unable to walk altogether. But I went to the doctor last week. I was in a wheelchair. He said, just give it a few more days rest and, just look for the next mountain thereafter. No, not before. Yeah.
Well, I'm glad you're out of the chair and you're feeling better.
So like that. What's that bloke who was on was it Netflix who did 36 mountains or 18 mountains?
Nims. Yeah.
Not him.
So is that you? You're going to be next, right? Okay. My next challenge is the Matterhorn.
Well, I'll check it out.
Never say never.
I was going to say you didn't say no. Anyway, we'll get to the mountain climbing experience of you. But to kick off, could you just sort of set the scene and tell us about the Finlayson clan and what your childhood was like? Because you're a well-known figure in dentistry, but how did it all start for you?
Who is the man behind?
The man is Scottish, very proud Scot, born just outside of Glasgow a few years back, and grew up in Scotland and England. My dad was in the Air Force, an officer in the Air Force, and then he went into the hotel business. And when we were 14, we emigrated to South Africa, to a large organization in Southern Africa. So my high school was in South Africa. My junior school was in Scotland. And that's really my childhood.
Whereabouts in South Africa, Ken?
In Johannesburg.
Oh, right, okay.
Yeah. So great climate. Lovely weather.
Very hot.
Lovely weather. The significant issues in my teen years with the apartheid situation, segregation, issues which I felt very strongly about and was not comfortable with, and ultimately left the country rather than doing military service, which was where you go at that time as a Caucasian. You were.
So you must have left then before Mandela was released and clerk and everything. Yeah. And
came back to Britain, and however, it was not planned or organised. It was an impromptu thing where I basically had to leave. So I came back to my home country, expecting to become a pilot in the Air Force.
Did you come back as a family, or did you just come back on your own?
Independently.
What age were you at this point, Ken?
18.
Right, so a young man. That's quite a big thing to come back, yeah.
Yeah. And I expected to join the Air Force, as my family had all been in the Air Force over the years. Had obviously been inspired by the movie Top Gun.
Of course.
I
because that's real life.
I felt I could do it better than that. But
Perhaps when we get to that bit, we could get like the edit of like the theme tune.
yeah.
Change the background. You could be on a fighter jet, on a boat or something.
And that's really it. And then that didn't materialise. I didn't understand the rules, which meant you had to be resident in the UK for a couple of years prior to applying, which I hadn't worked that out. So I was unable to join the Air Force as planned, and just got a variety of roles to tie myself over, and eventually ended up in publishing.
Fascinating. So, obviously being brought up in Scotland and then going to South Africa and then back to you were in England at this point. Did that kind of set you up well for dealing with uncertainty and having to look after yourself and manage your own destiny? Because that's quite an unusual upbringing, isn't it? What you had.
I think it did, in that all of us are more than capable of looking after ourselves. And I was in a situation whereby that came a little bit earlier than some, but it was fairly easy, really. Just, you have no safety net, therefore you just have to start doing things for yourself. And I presume many people of our age with our children, we're still helping them a lot, and that's the way of the world these days. But back in those days, it wasn't particularly unusual to be out on your own, and we struggled to start with, but you managed it fine.
I'm just thinking a seriously interesting accent.
Yeah.
Glasgow tinged with South African.
Yeah.
Back in the UK. Whoa.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you've obviously clearly got a strong entrepreneurial flair. Is that something that came from your father when he left the RAF and got into the hotel business? Are there other family members in business? Is this something that you acquired yourself on a kind of a needs must basis? How did that come about?
I think my dad was a very creative man, far, far more creative than I am. So he would have had an instinct to try different things. And I grew up in a household where that was normal. So if it wasn't business, it would be painting or public speaking or lots of different things my dad would just be doing whilst we watched and grew up in that culture. So I suppose that is the blueprint for me. I didn't mean to be entrepreneurial as such. However, I was never particularly keen to work in a large organization. I always felt that I'd like to make my own way. And whether that be within someone else's company or doing my own thing, I really have an independent streak, which I like to have my vision and try and fulfill it. So that was always going to be easier outside of a large company.
Yeah.
And how on your publishing journey, you sort of said you did various jobs and then it ended up in publishing. So what did you start publishing as? I can't imagine. Was it anything to do with healthcare or just like any type of publishing, like selling tractors or something?
I actually worked for a large American company initially called GTE, which is a huge US business media company. And then I worked for Reed Business Information, which is one of the biggest companies in the UK for media as well, also in the business media area. Ultimately working for a medical media business, healthcare actually, but strongly to the GP and hospital medicine area, which had a little interest in dentistry, but not significant.
What was your light bulb moment when you thought, oh, hello?
Well, as I say, I always wanted to try and create my own path. So I always had that in mind. So I was often at the weekends thinking, what could I do whilst I was in other employment?
Right, okay.
And then I thought, well, maybe I could start a magazine. And the medical media is quite expensive and quite sophisticated, and there's very significant global organizations operating in that space. And then I looked at the dentistry area and it wasn't the same. It was an easier more cost-effective route to get into. So I thought that's probably something that I could do, and decided to have a crack at that.
And how old were you then, Ken?
I was 12.
Wow, amazing.
Gosh, time goes backwards.
You got the whole thing started between Scotland and South Africa.
Yeah,
very impressive.
No, I was 28.
Oh, wow.
Yeah,
Oh, wow.
28.
So pretty young.
It feels it now. It didn't feel it then. I felt quite old at the time, and very, without going into too much boring depth, but I decided to go to the US, just literally in a backpacking style. It wasn't some sophisticated business trip. Went on a cheap flight to New York and went to dental practices, just knocked on the door, asked them for their media to have a look at what magazines they were reading, and knowing that US was more progressed in dentistry than we were, and just plagiarized the ideas from there, brought them back to the UK, sketched out some ideas based on what they were doing in the US, and effectively pulled my own model together off the back of that. And that's something that I've always done. I know that I don't have the best ideas. I hardly ever have a white piece of paper to work from. I rather go to what I believe to be best practice, typically in other sectors, and learn from excellence and success and try and implement it into what I'm doing, rather than Ken and his team have a white piece of paper and let's invent something wonderful. We'd rather say that is wonderful. How could we implement it into our area?
And I think truly innovating, the Elon Musk type characters, they're very, very few and far between. I think most of us just adapt and change things that we see and put our own take and tweak on it and make it a bit better. I think trying to start something new, which doesn't exist, where you're having to educate people into the need for something that wasn't there before, I think that's incredibly hard, and it burns money and time like you wouldn't believe. So I think the way you go about it is actually goes back to that kind of entrepreneurial commercial aspect of it. It's a sensible way to go and develop it. So when you started FMC as a publisher, did you have this grand plan that it was going to include an exhibition program and award ceremonies and digital content and CPD education and all the things that now fall under the FMC umbrella? Did you always see that it could become that?
At the time, the business plan, which as bankers you'd understand, needed to be presented to the bankers, which isn't what we called them, but obviously not to their face. But we had a euphemism for them anyway. But the
really nice people who are going to provide finance.
That's it.
That's what it is.
Wonder Kids, we called them. But the plan said that we develop into other vertical markets like veterinary, optical, GP, and so on. That's what the plan said. So we'd have a success and then proliferate out that way.
Roll it out.
In so far as digital media didn't exist, so that wasn't one of the, we didn't see that one coming at all. In fact, I still struggle with it to this day. But so that was the
so
thinking.
did Blockbuster.
Yeah.
It's interesting, isn't it? And it's interesting how I haven't heard the phrase vertical for a while. Do you remember everyone was like, everyone was vertical and horizontal, and we're going to do this and all that sort of stuff. It's quite interesting that people were like, we're going to do this, and then we're going to spread out into so and so. And then once you were in it, you realise there were so many more opportunities within where you were, as opposed to having to keep going to rolling out to another sector and stuff.
But in many ways, that's kind of how we've grown our own group. You kind of look at the needs of the audience you're servicing and you say, are there more things that we can do for that audience? Yes, well, let's do it. And as long as it kind of appeals to the people you're currently working with, and we all obviously work within dentistry, and it's relevant to your set of services and it adds value and it's needed, then kind of those are the sorts of things that naturally fit. And I think going into new and different markets, it's not always as easy as it sounds. Just because you're successful in one particular sector doesn't mean that it easily translates to another.
And you've got to start
sector.
then, haven't you? You've got to build a brand. Okay, you've got an acceptance that you've got the authority if someone looked at where you've been. But in reality, you're going into a completely new market where no one has a clue who you are anyway.
Yeah.
So you sort of have to start again, really. It's
Yeah.
bizarre.
Well, I think you guys have done a great job of that. The FTA brand going.
Thank you, Kim. Has it always been
Horizontal.
called Dentistry? Horizontal, yeah. Have you always called it Dentistry, or has it ever called anything else?
Well, the company's FMC. The brand was initially Dentistry Monthly.
Right.
And we came out every week, obviously. So we came out monthly, and we wanted to designate it with that title, and then we dropped the monthly as we became more frequent.
Oh, yeah, Dentistry Monthly. I remember that.
Yeah.
Well, it's other people have come and gone, haven't they? Do you remember that was it Dental Tribune or something, and other people have come, tried to get in the space, and then have sort of disappeared from the space. Yeah, you must be, along with, I suppose, BDJ, which is always there, and I can never quite remember any of the other guys, but you must be the most visible brand, I'd have thought.
Well, the BDJ and the BDA are the gold standard in our world. The level of information that they produce and the standard of that information is incredibly high. Where we fit in is in a more accessible style. So the idea of things that we do is that any practitioner from Harley Street, Scunthorpe, Scotland, anywhere, any nurse, dentist, practice manager can dip into FMC material and get something out of it.
It is interesting, isn't it?
We don't operate in that rarefied arena.
You've got sort of like dental practice and dental update, and they're well known in what they do. And then yours is, I always used to think yours was sort of like almost like the one that someone would sit in the staff room and read the big magazine, or because it was like a newspaper, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was.
As opposed to a little, and that must have been a conscious decision, I assume, was it, to make it that format?
Well, dentistry is eponymous to everybody, so we're not excluding anybody in the team or the industry, for that matter, from the media. And that's the brand that we've really worked very hard at, and to have the accessibility, which might be its physical size, the style of its content, the ease of reading, the whole package is there, so that everybody, whether you're the most learned professor in the sector, or many of whom are avid readers and comment positively and occasionally negatively on what we've done, through to new people coming into the community, can access dentistry and learn from it.
Yeah. And obviously one of the other things that you do, and it's just been published, is the Dentistry Top 50. And you've changed it this year, because in previous years you always had a ranking with one through to 50, and I think our good friend Milad tends to feature quite high in that previous ranking, and he does an amazing job with the stuff that he does. This year you've changed it in that it's just a top 50 with no ranking. What was the kind of the reasoning behind that?
Well, I think it's important to evolve. And we all know what happened to the dinosaurs, but that's really where we're at with it, just making it more valid, more acceptable, more interesting. So this year, just going back a fraction, is we initially had it as a vote-led entity, and naively felt that would be ideal. What's actually happened is it gets corrupted because some people lobby hard, other people use different IP addresses, or all
Get your
sorts
mates to vote for you, basically.
shenanigans went on, and that was dangerous and inappropriate. So this year we've recreated it to be more impact oriented. So we try and consider who's had a significant impact, and we do still have votes, but they don't create the list. They just help steer us in certain directions if we can see a trend through that. We ask lots of people, and in fact it's our team in the office that make the final decision as to who's included. And that's
Right.
that's still being understood out there. I think a lot of people don't realize that's actually what happens. So that the 2022 iteration of the top 50 is actually directly from FMC to the magazine to be published online. And
So it's effectively the opinion of FMC,
it is
the top
50.
It is
informed.
It's not, an informed opinion, but
Correct.
it's not people voting for their favourite. It's your team sit down and look at who they feel has made the biggest contribution in that year.
And the idea is who's really making an impact, and try and highlight and commend those people. Some whom don't seek commendation, they're just quietly going about it, but we'd like to highlight them. And others are more evident and enjoy the limelight, and that's also fine. So that's where we're evolving it to. And if in the office and in consulting with editorial board and looking at the votes, whatever that threw up, if we can't highlight 50 people who've made a big impact and get that pretty right, then really we have to take a long, hard look at ourselves. So that's the 50 list, and we don't feel it appropriate to rank people. It's just a collective of 50 people who we believe have had a big impact. We might have missed somebody, or there might be somebody in who's a bit
I'm not
questionable.
offended. It's fine.
Hopefully not. You guys were not far outside of it. That's all I can say.
Yeah, that's good. Thanks for that. Yeah. We've created our own list, haven't we?
But Ken, thank you for that, because I think it's useful to get kind of the behind the scenes as to what goes on.
2023.
Yeah, because I think
STREVENS.
Right. Oh.
Just checking.
I think a lot of people see it, and you know what the world's like. You know, when anything that turns out, which is a list of people, it's always going to get people being positive, some people being a bit sniffy. But I think that understanding that it's kind of the informed opinion of FMC and who's contributed in that year. It's like I say, it's a really useful thing to know.
The other thing, just quickly on it, is that our company philosophy and attitude is to be positive and look forward and try and provide good, useful, valuable information and take a positive view on what's going on. As we all know, for example, in the consumer media, there's a lot of negativity about dentistry and the cost of dentistry and wealthy dentists and whatever people might say. Our view is to try and maintain a very positive, upbeat, celebratory perspective on it, and try and celebrate good things. And as you say, we do get some flack from time to time. I'd say 95, whatever % of people really like it. And in fact, the Dentistry Top 50 is probably the most popular thing in the dental media all year. But you can't please all the people.
Do you get people who will contact you and moan because they're not in the top 50? Obviously don't mention names, but do you get people who, like, when they get it, I can't believe I'm not in the top 50. I'm going to give Ken a call. Do you get people like that?
Well, it does happen. Obviously, you two have both contacted me.
Yeah, what?
I don't create the list, and I'm not that close to the process. So, it does happen that people might stop me in the corridor type of thing, but it's not something that I can really comment on.
Fine.
So the answer is yes.
just to change tack and sort of it leads into the Kilimanjaro thing. You've openly talked about how your world changed in March 2020 when you lost your wife Kimberly to COVID. It's the most terrible thing to happen. That's over 2 years ago now. How are you doing? How's that last couple of years been like for you?
Yeah, I'm doing well, thanks. It's been a hard couple of years. And the culmination of that grieving period probably was the Kilimanjaro climb, dedicating that to Kimberly and trying to do good for the sector and support Dentaid.
You raised a huge amount of money.
Yeah, thank you for your support too, which was very generous indeed. And I was amazed and delighted by the support we got from the community. Actually, many people supported us, and Tim Maloney, who actually led the climb, not me, I tagged along, grabbed him, and he called me up. But we had phenomenal backing, and it was a very powerful, emotional, cathartic trip. And we've now purchased, or through Dente, the vehicle, and it's being worked on. Hopefully, going to.
So Dente, they fund mobile dental units to deliver dental services in the UK and overseas. That's right, isn't it? And you've been able to actually provide a whole vehicle through your fundraising.
Yeah, I think Dente do a multitude of different things in dentistry to help people. One of which is in the UK, they have I'm not sure how many, 3 or 4 maybe, of these buses which go to troubled areas to help people who can't normally get dentistry. The one that we've just gotten involved with or helped purchase is I think the state of the art vehicle, and it can do a hell of a lot of good out there, and look forward to getting it on the road.
I mean, to put it into context, I don't know what the number's at, but it's over £50,000 you've raised, isn't it?
Yeah, it's over.
Which is I mean, well done, and for you in Kimberley's name to do something like that is special. It's a lovely thing to do.
Yeah, the bus actually has her name on the front.
Right.
So, like Eddie Stobbart trucks, it's called Kimberley Finlayson, the actual vehicle, which I haven't seen that yet, but it will have, and it would be great to have that.
Yeah.
Kimberley driving around the country helping people as she did when she was alive.
Yeah. So on to the climb. Obviously, very few people get to do this. I'm fascinating about the training you did, the kit you needed. Did you suffer with altitude sickness, exhaustion, the exhilaration when you hit the top? Just talk us through kind of that whole process. What was it like?
Well, if anyone spent time with Tim Maloney, they'll realise that I didn't have any option but to complete the challenge. And he's a great leader.
He's only got an on and off switch, hasn't he? There's nothing in between. Yeah. It's either all on or all off.
We were doing it, and he was making sure we did it. So it was quite tiring, and the training program was not great. I've had an injured foot for quite a long time, and so I couldn't run, and I couldn't really walk very far. So it was a concern. But obviously watching alcohol consumption, doing various exercises in the gym type of thing was my regimen, and we made it. It wasn't exhilarating at the top. It was, for me, a triumph to support Kimberley and make sure I got there. So it was in that sense, I just needed to tick that box and not let the people down that had supported the mission, our contributors like yourselves, and then it's just about getting down and enjoying the celebration at the bottom, which Tim and I did into the early hours of the night. I can assure you.
I think I'd appreciated how hard it is. It was, it's obviously we know Tim and we know you, and in a way, going to the top of Kilimanjaro, quite a lot of people do it. As in they publicise that they've done it. So you sort of think, oh, well, it's just climbing up a mountain, isn't it? But when you then actually listen to you guys and you watch more, you learn more about it, it's not just climbing up Snowdon.
Oh, no.
It's significantly harder. And I think sometimes people probably perceive it as really not as risky because, oxygen, you sometimes you need oxygen, don't you? I can't remember. And some people don't respond very well. And I'm sure people have died on the way up. Yeah. And it's just, I think it's one of those ones. I think the risk sometimes is that people see it, but from looking at it and listening, I know that it is so much harder than the sort of perception about it. It's almost like you had some people, I would imagine, might have thought it was a little bit of a stroll up Kilimanjaro.
Well, when I looked at the pictures of you and Tim, and I think was it Tim's brother-in-law?
Brother
came with you. There's no doubt you are knackered. Those pictures of you on the top of the mountain, you can see you are absolutely on the bones of your arse. It's not an easy thing to do. And then you've got to get back down. And I think people forget that you've then got safely get back down. Was it ever in doubt when you were on the mountain you were climbing? Was there any moment where it's like, I'm not sure we're going to do this?
Well, I must say, Chris really nailed it with his explanations, because that's exactly what I thought. It's a walk up a mountain, for God's sake. I mean, it'd be fine. That's how I actually got into it.
That's why you thought, yeah.
That's how you got suckered into it, wasn't it?
Not even suckered into it. That's when I was standing at the bottom of the mountain. That's what I thought it was going to be. I really did. And I was pretty shocked when it wasn't that easy. Well, I had the one incident where I rolled my ankle badly on the way up. And only I knew how bad that was. Tim, fun enough, wasn't overly sympathetic to the situation and felt that it was just a minor injury. I should keep running, and it was quite bad. I'm still suffering actually to this day. But adrenaline and Tim, his great leader, pushed me hard. Without that, I wouldn't have made it, truthfully. So I did have a wobble, but we got there, and then getting down is just an ordeal that you suffer because you're up there, and it's unpleasant, but it's
how long
very
did it take
doable.
in total, up and down?
8 days.
Wow, I mean that's a lot, isn't it? It's not a stroll.
No.
It's not a stroll up Snowdon. It is.
Yeah,
it's a proper
I think
mountain.
Snowdon's probably quite hard too, but it's obviously a bit bigger, and it's a longer version.
In fairness,
of
you
that.
can take a train up Snowdon if you fancy it.
Yes,
There's an alternative, isn't there? You said that this was
helicopter.
You said this was kind of the culmination of the last 2 years to climb Kilimanjaro. Did it almost feel like that was kind of a wrap-up for those last 2 years, or do you feel now that you want to go on and do other challenges, or was this something that you was kind of focused towards?
No, that's something I was really focused towards. Yeah, very focused towards it. You don't have closure. What people say closure.
Yeah,
but you don't really have closure because you've got the memory and you can't forget. But it was significant to sort of say, well, what a horrible period that's been. We finish with a dedication, with a real life memorial to Kimberly and help a lot of people. It felt good to have done that. And
yeah, I can imagine.
Then it's a question of let's do new things, whatever that might be. But Tim's obviously dropped me from future expeditions based on my performance. On Kilimanjaro.
Completely understandable. Understandable.
Yeah, that's what I said to him as well. And but yeah. So who knows what happens next? But that was
And has that process changed your own outlook on life? Has it changed you as a person?
I don't think so. Truthfully, no. It was great to do it, but I don't think so.
Yeah, no, because sometimes people do those things, don't they? And they kind of have this moment where everything changes.
Yeah.
So do you think your mountain climbing career has started and stopped with that single climb, or will we see you on other?
I'd imagine
we won't be seeing you do another a NIMS or anything like that.
No.
Doing a number of peaks in a period of time.
The easy route.
Yeah. I think time to try something different. So I'll give that when I can start walking properly. I'll give that some thought.
Cocktail drinking.
There we are.
Well, yeah, hopefully
Around the pool. See how many cocktails you can
around the world in 80 bars, something like that.
That's now there's a challenge, isn't it? Around the world in 80 bars.
Yeah, that'd be quite good fun.
That'd be a good TV
with Chris
show.
Strevens.
You're a publisher, sort that out.
Yeah.
Arrive by private jet. I like that idea.
Yeah, I'd love that. If you can sort that out, Chris, I'd love that.
Hang on, let me just make a note.
No, it sounds like a wonderful
Just honest, we know a publisher who could advertise it. We do can.
Yeah.
And just going back to your own success, what would you say is the most important thing that's helped you in your success? If you could distill it down to one thing that was critical to get you to where you are, what would you say that is?
I'd say, Avis coined it some time ago, but we just try harder. Yeah, always try harder than the other people. It takes away all the, there's so many variables, aren't there, Andy? So, you can't control many of the variables. Intelligence,
you can only do your best, can't you?
Intelligence, the caliber of the idea, what the competition, have got heritage-wise, standard-wise, but you can control the level of energy and effort that you put in. And my dad told me many years ago, Ken, don't work harder, work smarter. And I said to him, how about harder and smarter? I'm not purporting myself to be smart, by the way, but we definitely have a culture to really try hard, as epitomized on the climb and the things we do. We might not always get it right, but we'll certainly try. Really try hard.
Oh, I love that. And like you say, that's a very difficult thing for other people to compete against as well, because you have an attitude as we're always going to go the extra mile.
Yeah.
And if that then becomes part of your culture and you end up with an army of people all going the extra mile, it becomes very powerful.
Yeah.
There's that aim for the skies and you might hit the trees if you don't get it. But if you aim for the trees, you might hit the bottom of the tree.
Yeah.
So if you aim high, even if you don't achieve, you will achieve better than you would have done if you were.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We always wrap up with a couple of questions. We always ask our guests the same two questions. So our first one is, if you could be the fly on the wall with somebody in a certain situation, what situation would you like to be? Where would that be, and who would you be with?
Well, there's a thing going on right now, which is unfortunate in the world, and that is this horrendous Ukrainian situation. And I'm hell of a confused about it. I think we all are. We're getting a Western media take on it. We don't know to what level of spin we get on that or not. And obviously there's Eastern spin goes on within that eastern side of Europe. If I could be a fly on the wall, I'd love to sit in Putin's office and watch and listen and learn and see, is this guy for real? What's he really doing? What does he really think? Because, I just don't know. And I don't believe everything I read and hear from CNN or from BBC or anywhere. I know where there's a massive propaganda saying to us that there's a demon there, ruining the world. And I feel that is the case, but I want to be that fly on the wall. Let's see what he's really doing. What's going on?
Yeah, no, I think you're right. I think I think a lot of people are very confused about what's going on and what his real motivation is for what's happening.
Yeah.
And hopefully that situation is going to wrap itself up fairly soon.
Well, hopefully. It doesn't feel that way.
It
doesn't feel
it doesn't,
that way,
unfortunately.
Let's hope so, for all those people suffering. And we talked about, my situation on Kilimanjaro or wherever it is. We've all got issues and problems and hassles. But could you imagine lying in your bed at night with the air raid sirens? And
it's incomprehensible, isn't it? It's totally incomprehensible. To try and put yourself in the shoes of someone like that. I was reading an article today that some lady, 91, I think, she survived the Nazis when they were there because she's Jewish, and then she died in a flat out of food and no water or something. And you just look at all that and you think, man, that's multiplied all over the place. And in a way, it's not just Ukraine it's multiplied around the world in different situations and stuff.
Yeah.
Like that.
Oh yeah. That's just the one that's in the news. There's lots of other situations. Yeah, no, it's horrendous. No, I agree. It'll be very interesting. And then our last one is, if you could meet anyone, is there someone that you'd like to meet?
Fictional, non-fictional,
Fictional,
dead, alive,
fiction.
Yeah, anyone, Sherlock Holmes.
Well, we're on a podcast. I'm in media and communications, and the whole area fascinates me. What you can do, how you can do it, the power of communication, the different trends and people, the conservatives, the liberals, the young people, the what do you call them? Those people that doubt everything. There's a guy, I think he's the biggest podcaster in the world at the moment, called Joe Rogan. I'm sure you've heard of him. You guys, people like you know about him. I'm not, politically, I don't know exactly where he stands, I do find the guy fascinating in his ability to extricate a different view on the world from pretty much everybody he talks to. I'd be fascinated to know what he extricated from me. But I think he is a guy for us all to watch, because love him or loathe him, he's got a massive following of the next generation. So we think, and Putin thinks, and those of us of a certain age believe that we're shaping the world and da da da. But I think people are falling under his influence are probably more likely to be the ones shaping the world, and the people that love him and follow him and feel motivated by his views is probably where we're going. And so, I'd like to meet him and find out, is he for real? What is he really about? Because,
his influence is,
Dramatic.
hundreds of millions of downloads. I know fairly recently he kind of got caught up in some debate around the vaccination and anti-vaxxing and that thing, and it blew up, and he kind of had to come out and make a statement and an apology. And
people wanted to drop him,
but like he said himself, he's not an expert on this stuff. He's just a guy sharing an opinion, but he has.
And I'm not sure he does
influence.
apologise, Andy. I don't know if he outright apologises for anything. Maybe he did. I didn't hear that, but. I know that he gets commercial pressure from Spotify because they pay him $100 million.
Yeah, and the reality is he could walk away from those guys, couldn't he? He doesn't.
Yeah,
but and on a much wider note, is one of the things that we suffer from society, and I don't know the answer, is that you're almost not allowed to just have an opinion.
Yeah,
if you say something, you can get castigated for
it's just
just having an opinion.
Cancel culture, isn't it?
The danger is people don't have opinions because they don't want to put themselves across.
But the world's become quite binary, hasn't it? If I say something, it now feels the only thing you can do is agree with me or disagree with me.
Yeah.
You can't have a debate or a conversation or share views and perhaps come to some middle ground. It's either I agree or I disagree, and that's it. And that's kind of the Twitter mentality of the world.
And I think Joe Rogan does explode that notion by taking both sides of the argument and sitting in the middle of it and stimulating them to give the young people a perspective on things, rather than taking the feed straight off Fox News, which has got a very aggressive right-wing bias, and
believing that's the truth.
That's communications going forward. I mean, even in dentistry, in my history, then the typically older guys, I view them as older guys, they're probably my age when they spoke to me, but that would say, cosmetic dentistry, no. Whitening, no. People don't want that. It's wrong for our country, etc., etc. And yet now that's a mainstay of high street dentistry. Sad to say it, guys, but the three of us, our views are rapidly losing focus and are not creating the agenda for the future. It is that next wave of thinking that will be the world in 10 years, and our views are probably coming to the end. We'll be there criticizing these young people and telling them that it didn't used to be this bad, and so on and so forth.
That was the end of this episode, and we're going to call this one the three wizened old blokes.
Yeah, three guys around a PC.
But no, I think you're right, Ken. I think you're right, and I think it's also important for the older guard to create space for the new guys as well, so that the new ideas come through. Because the danger is things don't move forward in the way and at the pace they should. So I think creating space for the new ideas is important.
But we were talking about managing people. I mean, I noticed we're going off a bit of a tangent here, but do you remember we were talking about managing people? We said basically human beings have sort of been the same for the last 50,000 years, really, in the way they respond to stimulus and stuff like that. I said the things that we've really changed are how we were talking about management. We said, at one time it was a good scene, it was okay to beat your staff and whip them and stuff like that. Whereas we now know that that's probably not a great way of managing people. But psychologically, we sort of still respond to the same things as we responded before. It's a bit like the old Maslow's hierarchy, isn't it? Really?
Yeah, completely.
It's fascinating, but you then need a different generation to explain it in a different way. Almost, it's quite fascinating.
It's time honoured, isn't it? And using a social analogy, but if anyone's ever been to a golf club, the old guard struggle with the new ideas, and it was always the way, I'm sure, and will continue to be the way, and you can't stop change anyway. So there is no halting it. You have to say this, however pleasant or unpleasant you might think. Let's say the Joe Rogan group of people, the hundreds of millions listening to his views and the views of his guests, they're shaping the future, whether we like it or not. But down the pub, metaphorically speaking, if I speak to my 50-something-year-old mates, they don't like it at all. So we don't like this. It's like, well, that's almost academic. Yeah. But that's the power of communication too. So I look forward to that next phase. And lastly, just on that, in a dental note, so I started Dentistry Monthly back in 1924, I think it was, something like that, a while back.
Just before the crash.
And then
were you responsible for the Great Depression?
My arch rival at that point, he did become very depressed. But
I've read some of the articles.
He said to me, "You'll never survive. It's never going to work." He just didn't like the notion of change and progress at all, and unfortunately his business didn't last, and I'm still here, and we just have to keep evolving, listening to this. Younger people are watching and getting inspired by them and giving them leadership and strength, because if we try and hold it too long, we'll blow it. I mean, and the analogy of the mountain, Tim led the way the whole way. If it had been me, we'd have packed in halfway. We need to get these younger people to be the leaders, and we'll advise them from time to time and help them. But that's as far as
we'll be doing the around the world in 80 bars, Ken.
Yeah. Let's trailblaze that one.
Good with all this technology, we could do it from whichever bar. Yeah, no, that's fine. Yeah, go ahead and do that or something.
Yeah,
I think there might be a germ of an idea there.
Yeah,
I think there could be a germ.
Well, let's go for it, guys. I look forward to the invitation.
I mean, countries you could do 80 countries. Yeah, it probably would be, because you wouldn't have to do them all like consecutively, because obviously I think probably my wife wouldn't be too happy if I did 80 days in 80 bars, but you could do like a few.
We could get Michael Payne to join us.
He
still likes travelling.
Yeah, he'd be a good
Ken, before this turns into a 2-hour podcast and we're going to challenge Joe Rogan for one of his epics, we better wrap it up.
There we go, that's 5 in one day.
we really appreciate your time, Ken. It's been brilliant talking to you. I think you've had an incredible couple of years. So much has gone on, but to hear that kind of beginning and those 2 years, and then that culmination of the Kilimanjaro, but also your outlook on where the future's at and creating that space for the younger people. It's been a fascinating chat. Really, really enjoyed it.
Pleasure, guys. Really nice to speak to you.
Yeah.
Cheers. All the best.
As always. Yeah, look after yourself.
Thanks, Ken.
Cheers, Ken. That was a lovely chat to Ken, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was. He's a nice guy, actually. I know we've known him for a long time.
Yeah.
And we meet up in the shows and stuff like that. But yeah, he's just a lovely guy. It's a nice story, actually. I mean, it's funny, isn't it? He doesn't class himself as an entrepreneur, but still, he got on a plane, went to New York, went to look at the publications of the American dental practices because he knew they'd be advanced.
He does.
So that's entrepreneurial thinking ahead, isn't
slightly
it?
differently.
He didn't suddenly go, I'll tell you what, let's start a magazine and then try and do it from scratch. He thought, I'll tell you what, where can I learn from? So I think he's also very modest, isn't he?
Oh, very. But I thought also he's in a very reflective mood, that whole process, and it was good for him to talk about Kimberley and that period in his life, but also that culmination of the Kilimanjaro climb and what that meant to him. Not just in the kind of the physical challenge, but it's obviously a big deal. And like I say, it was good to hear how that felt and what it looked like. And also hearing that, it was Tim Maloney that kind of dragged him up the mountain. And we know Tim really well. And that wasn't surprising because he is a kind of, we're going to get this done type guy.
Yeah. I quite like the fact that he resisted the temptation to create almost like a Kimberley charity.
Yeah.
He looked at it and said, actually, I can raise money, donate it to Dent Aid, who can do more with it because they were a charity already with all the infrastructure, and that he's going to have a permanent memorial, well, as long as the bus lasts, of Kimberley driving around.
Oh yeah, it's special.
I think that's great because you could quite easily have thought, well, I'm going to use the 50k plus to do something else, but almost then potentially do you dilute it? You know, he's giving it to someone, and that's what they do. He's fitting it
and
up.
within dentistry, which is where Kimberley works, it fits nicely. And I also enjoyed listening to him explain the background to the Dentistry Top 50 and how it's an informed opinion of people within FMC as opposed to it being on a pure voting system, which can open itself to people kind of fiddling around and things.
And it's that thing, isn't it? Whether you agree who's in the top 50, it's just their opinion. That's all it is. It's someone has made an opinion about something. It's not almost like on a chart of, you haven't plotted
not like a
who's
grading
done this
system or anything like that.
It's someone's opinion, and the answer is we can all have opinions, which is great, and sometimes we agree or don't agree.
It was brilliant.
Lovely.
Yeah, it was. It's really enjoyable.
Thank you for listening to this episode of Dentology, where we discuss the business of dentistry. If you like what you heard, please do subscribe where you found this episode. That would be amazing. And also follow us on Instagram.